You are listening to The Main Phase, episode 105, a Magic the Gathering podcast bringing you new and exciting information about your favorite game. This week we return with field reports for our most recent spicy Friday Night Magic decks and discuss the upcoming changes to the Pro Tournament scene. Stay tuned.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. This is Debo from Land Say Go, and you're listening to The Main Phase, a Magic the Gathering podcast bringing you our love and insight about our favorite game. I'm joined this week with our co-host, Jeremy. How are you doing today, JB?
I'm doing great.
Today we'll be filing a couple of field reports of our most recent F&M decks, and then also talking about the exciting news about the new eSports initiative starting in 2019.
Yeah, a lot of really exciting stuff coming from WotC in terms of some announcements. $10 million in total prize money available in the pool over the course of both Magic Fests, and starting to see some prize money trickle into the MTG arena.
Yep, it sounds like a lot of fun. We'll delve into that a little bit later in the podcast here. So we were at F&M this past week, and we brought some of our home brews that we have up on our website right now, landsaygo.com. And you brought something that was really spicy. What'd you bring?
I brought goblins.
Goblins?
Standard goblins.
Awesome.
One would think that out of just 14 possible goblin creatures, that the 11 I chose would have really been fighting an uphill battle, but it ended up going 4-1 with only a loss to Is It Drake's on Friday Night Magic. I gotta be honest with you, Debo. In terms of the way this deck performed, there was a couple cards that seemed pretty bad, but ended up doing really well, right? When you think about just a vanilla goblin like Goblin Instigator, you think, okay, great, 2 power for 2 mana. But the fact that that card is able to go wide, and we're getting that at a consistent turn 2 play with 4 of those in the deck, really just amazing stuff. Another card that I really wasn't sure about, one that we've talked about in the past that you kind of mentioned was an all-star, Goblin Cratermaker. Ended up being able to kill Karn twice, and I think that was ultimately the optimal play for that card, right? Also got a chance to use him to kill a treasure map on an enter the battlefield response as well, which was pretty fantastic. What deck did you bring?
So the deck I brought with me was one that was aptly named by Jeremy called This Land Is Your Land.
This land is my land.
Yeah. And it's basically another aggro deck, but it's using cards that we normally wouldn't think of as good, namely being Old Growth Dryads, Wanted Scoundrels, cards like that. So what makes this deck interesting is that it does not care that your opponent gets mana.
No. I mean, the original name for the deck, just so the people at home understand, was no expletive deleted given aggro, right? You just go ahead and fill in the gaps there. But that is really what the deck did, is it didn't give any expletive deleted at all. It just kept doing what it did, right? Surprisingly, Shaper Sanctuary main board, which has consistently been a sideboard card for a lot of creature decks, especially those running green ever since Exelon. But running that main board ended up being an incredibly smart choice for you. Walk us through a little bit of some of those synergies.
Sure. So basically, the standout card was Pelt Collector.
Yeah.
Get that down turn 1. And then turn 2, you would drop a Shaper Sanctuary and then an Old Growth Dryads.
Yeah.
And
just amazing.
And so they'd be like, okay, so I get to tutor a land, and then wait, I can't kill your thing because then you get to draw a card. Exactly, swinging it in for 2, right? And basically, that's just kind of how the turn sequences went. And then there were times when you would get maybe 2, 3 Shaper Sanctuaries out in the battlefield, and then once they kill your creature, you with targeted removal, you get to draw 3 cards.
I mean, that kind of tempo is just so prohibitive to a lot of the meta decks that you're seeing, right? That are running 1-for-1 removal spells that are targeting creatures. It just happens to be the case. I know playing against it when we played our round that I was intentionally not targeting your creatures and trying to trade with you on the battlefield. And actually the only way that I ended up winning both of those games in our match that we played was by going directly to you with the Siege Gang Commander. So it ended up being an incredibly impressive deck. For me, standout cards, I think, are the obvious ones. I think that it was Siege Gang Commander. People don't know how to really play against that card in the meta right now, even though it's been around for 15 years.
For your Goblins deck. Right?
Yeah, for the Goblins deck, yeah. People don't really know how to play against Siege Gang Commander all that well. It's a really confusing thing that starts happening when suddenly I have 14 represented shocks sitting on the board, right, in terms of total creature equity. But it's pretty good. Another real standout card for my deck ended up being Volley Veteran. right? Uncommon from M19, deals damage equal to the number of goblins in play to target creature when it comes in. So looking at a possible curve for that, we go Skirk Prospector into Goblin Instigator, into Goblin War Chief, into Volley Veteran, dealing damage to their best possible creature, and then having also leverage from the Skirk Prospector to drop Siege Gang Commander and just go balls to the wall.
That play actually is exactly what you did to me. You swung for 10 on turn 4.
Yeah.
And I had maybe one creature to block. Maybe.
Right.
It was pretty brutal.
Yeah, it felt like goblins.
Yep.
It felt like goblins. It played like goblins. And I'm going to highly recommend to anybody who's listening to this podcast, if you're wondering about a standard deck that you could go play, it would be certainly either Debo's deck or my deck. They are both extremely cost efficient, very low to the ground in terms of budget, and incredibly fun to play.
One of the favorite plays that I had was actually with Crawl Harpooner from the sideboard and Memorial to Folly.
Yeah, I saw that.
And this was specifically with Drakes. So they would get down their big flyer, and then I would Crawl Harpooner, and then kill their Drake, and then leave up enough mana to be able to flip Memorial to Folly to get back my Crawl Harpooner the next time they played a Drake. And it just worked splendidly. Often there's enough creatures in your graveyard that you can also kill something as large as that 6/6 demon. The name escaped.
Doom Whisperer.
Doom Whisperer. Yeah,
he's everywhere.
I was able to kill.
I don't know. You can never tell these days.
I was able to kill 2 in the same game using the Crawl Harpooners and that same trick. This deck definitely has a lot of really fun play. There's 20 cards in this aggro deck that'll draw you cards. 20 cards.
Yeah. And I think you're saying draw, but I mean, ultimately it's filter as well.
Oh yeah, filter.
It's filter as well, but essentially it's tempo.
Right.
Which is really weird for a black-green deck, right? To be able to move through the cards as quickly as you do. And honestly, the real standout for me in watching the games that I had because my matches ended quickly, right? The first match I played was actually the longest match of the night for me in terms of Friday Night Magic against that game of Is It Drakes. It was a slow grind, but he was eventually able to control the board, land a couple well-placed ionizes at the top of my curve and let me out. So I had an opportunity to kind of stand behind and watch some of your matches, really getting back to Shaper Sanctuary. Nothing against Crawl Harpooner, nothing against that, but Shaper Sanctuary, and then also a card out of your sideboard. Can you guess which one I'm gonna bring up here? Really impressed me.
Death Gorge Scavenger?
Death Gorge Scavenger. Walk us through that, because I know that felt good, just from what I was watching.
Yeah, so especially against Is It Drakes, because they have a lot of those jumpstart cards in their graveyard. Being able to cast your Death Gorge Scavenger and then enter the battlefield, be able to exile something important in their graveyard felt really good. And then if they happen to have a Drake in the graveyard and you're getting low on life total, you can just exile that away, gain a couple of life. And so basically it was the perfect stabilizer against Drakes. It was also a really good stabilizer against Surveil decks.
Yeah.
Basically, all of the decks that care about graveyards, it was a perfect stabilizer.
I saw you running the Death Gorge Scavenger after sideboard and chew up 3 Arclight Phoenixes from the graveyard, and it was glorious to see that happen. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It kind of makes me feel like maybe we'll see some more Death Gorge Scavenger as soon as Jund kind of rolls around. We get some more real good Rakdos removal spells. Terminate, Dreadbore,
Yep. So how did your deck feel as you were playing it?
It felt like goblins. I said that before. It feels like goblins. Have you ever played a goblin deck?
I have, yeah.
You have? What does it feel like?
Feels like goblins.
So you play a mountain, you play a goblin,
yep.
You go to combat, you pass the turn.
Yep.
Turn 2, what do?
You play another goblin.
You play a land. You play another goblin. Maybe it brings a token into play. Then what do? You go to combat. And then what do? You pass the turn, right? I was incredibly surprised by the synergy of this deck. I mean, we've got 14 goblins in standard right now. I picked 11 of them and jammed them in a deck with 22 lands, and off it went.
Yep.
It did what it did. It felt like goblins. It felt very strong. Again, a 4-1 record against good opponents. Really good opponents, and a fairly good sampling of the meta. I played Red White Angels. I won. Mm-hmm. I played This Land Is Your Land, a hot new deck, just taking the meta by storm now. I played Is It Drakes. I lost. I played White Weenies, crushed it. And then I played a really weird, badly constructed elf deck that was trying to ramp to Omniscience. And game plan in theory was very good, but it wasn't solid in terms of execution. So that was the one after my first loss. But anyway, I get off track here, but it felt like Goblins with a top end curve of Siege Gang Commander, and it felt great. It felt great.
So for mine, for those who are interested in playing the deck, I never felt like I was in danger of losing the game. This deck does not feel like you're going to lose the game. Being able to consistently play 3/3s and 4/3s and 3/2s
and fast.
Like you're only running 20 lands, but it doesn't matter. You're just constantly finding action.
In our matchup on turn 4, you had 14 power on the board.
Yeah.
14 power.
So you never really feel like you're losing the game until you finally lose the game.
Yeah.
And then you're like I said, you're constantly drawing cards. There's 20 cards in this deck that will filter or draw you cards. Mm-hmm. And then really I found that giving your opponents resources really was not an issue in this deck at all.
Here's the reason why. Okay. Is because it's not putting cards per se into their hand. Right. They are still burning their resources from their available cards in hand to deal with your aggro mechanics. And just because they're filtering out a basic land and popping it onto the battlefield, tapped or untapped in the case of Assassin's Trophy, doesn't mean that they have an infinite amount of resources in terms of their 1-for-1 exchanges to answer your aggro. So it ended up being an incredibly good strategy and ultimately surprising, I think, to a lot of the people that you played. First of all, they had no idea what the heck was going on.
That's true. A lot of them had to take Old Growth Dryads. Like, what is this card? I don't even remember this card.
Right.
You know,
I get a land. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. I think.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And to go along with that too, since you're drawing so many cards in this deck, you're also finding your answers. So you're running 8 kill spells as well.
Right.
So 4 cast downs and 4 Assassin's Trophies. So you're drawing a bunch of cards. You're finding your kill spells. So they play their big baddie with all their extra mana that they have, and you just kill it right away. It didn't matter.
I mean, we talked about Death Gorge Scavenger in terms of having to go to the board. What was getting boarded out for you in most cases?
Sure. So the 2 cards that were getting boarded out the most was Old Growth Dryads, specifically against, is it Drakes in that matchup? Because you really don't want to give them more lands.
That makes sense.
And then Ruin Raider was also getting pulled out.
Ruin Raider, yeah.
This one feels like it should be good, but it was actually killing me even in this deck that is very low to the ground, where the top end of the curve is 3 mana. I believe in our matchup, game 1, it dealt 9 damage.
9 damage, that's right.
So,
yeah.
It was one of those things where man, like, it feels like it has a place, but if I can't even make it work in a deck that's this low to the ground, I just don't think I can get it to work.
I mean, for me, the card that seemed to be coming out, going back to Goblins, if I could, just to touch on this, but the card that seemed to be getting boarded out for me a lot was Dark Dweller Oracle, right? This goblin, it says sacrifice a creature. It doesn't say sacrifice a goblin, right? Then we exile the top card of our library, and we may play that card, not cast that card, play that card. So it corrects mana sometimes. But I was finding that what ended up happening with it in the aggro matchups specifically was that it just became a bear. It became a turn 2/2/2 that I would trade off in blocks. That happened in our game.
Yep.
You saw me do it. I cast 2 Dark Dweller Oracles, never got a chance to use their abilities because I was having to trade off for blocks. But I'd board those out, and most of the time I was bringing in either copies of Experimental Frenzy or 2 more Legion War Bosses, which was an absolute all-star in my deck, by the way. That card is really good. It's really good. It's Rabblemaster Light. Goblin Rabblemaster is a different card. I understand that, but it kind of feels like Rabblemaster Light. 2/2 tokens are better than 1/1 tokens.
Yeah, it seems like it.
It seems like they might be better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all in all, the cards that got sideboarded out most for me was Dark Dweller Oracle and then surprisingly Skirk Prospector.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was dropping the Skirk Prospectors and maybe even the Fanatical Firebrands to board in Shocks in the aggro matchups. Again, having 1 FNM to go play 5 matches to really test these decks, I don't think is sufficient.
Sure.
With the additional online play that we had put into the decks, though, I think we can fairly say that both of these are keepers. I'm happy to have them up at landsago.com, and they're certainly decks that we should continue to rep, at least until rotation. Who knows, they may change significantly.
Yep, and I definitely think that, there's definitely a couple of changes that we can make to these decks too. So we may even see something online, or we tweak the deck as we play it, and we'll post a follow-up on these decks as well.
We might as well. I mean, I'm thinking we might see more goblins in Ravnica Allegiance. I would almost guarantee that we'll probably see a few more goblins to kind of slot in. Maybe they'll bring them back. Maybe they'll make them great again. Didn't you make a couple last-minute tweaks to This
did.
land is your land? What was that again?
So I took out the main tweaks was I took out Find Finality over Izareth. So I put
surprised
Izareth.
me, yeah.
I put Izareth in the sideboard. There was two reasons why. One was because I was playing Ruin Raider and getting hit for 8 damage did not feel great. And then two, Izareth seemed like it felt a little bit better because I could board out a creature and put her in to be able to recur creatures from the graveyard should I be in a removal heavy matchup that doesn't care if I'm drawing cards or not. So
isn't she just perfect for your list too?
Yeah, because since everything costs 3 or less, if you're able to cast her, you're able to get anything back from the graveyard.
I mean, she's perfect.
Yeah.
Just perfect for the list. That's a solid choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a solid choice. Good last minute pluck there. I took the article posted list. So,
is there any changes that you would make for the future?
Absolutely. I'd probably run 4 Legion Warboss main at this point.
Okay.
I was running 4 Siege Gang Commander. I think we could do without one of those. And I'd also drop a single copy of Goblin Instigator as well to make room for those Legion Warbosses. It's just such an all-star.
Sure.
The best thing about Legion Warboss is that it reliably draws the removal spell from your opponent. All the time. It draws the removal spell. Because left unchecked, it's a problem.
Yeah.
They should be saving that removal spell for Siege Gang Commander. And almost 85-90% of the time, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They get blindsided by the Siege Gang Commander. Yeah, I would definitely take it up to 4 Legion Warboss.
Okay. For me, I would probably replace Ruin Raider with Jade Light Ranger and then take out the Nullhide Ferox, the 2 that I had in the sideboard, which did win me a game.
It did.
They did win me a game.
It did.
But I think if I would go that Jade Light Ranger route, I'd just put in 2 Wild Growth Walkers instead.
That's great. Yeah, you're running 4 Merfolk Branch Walkers in there,
Yep.
right?
So at that point, we would have 8 Explore creatures. So boarding in the Wild Growth Walkers would just feel right.
Yeah, Jade Light Ranger especially, I think, is a fantastic choice. Having seen the damage that the Ruin Raider ended up doing to you, and we want that card to be good.
Yeah.
It can be good, but it's also very dangerous.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, all in all, I think a great F&M experience.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I kind of like this pattern. Maybe throughout the week, we post a couple deck lists. We actually faithfully build those standard decks. And then maybe on the podcast, we can give you a roundabout of them, unless there's, of course, other news that we need to cover.
Kind of like what's coming up next.
What is coming up next?
So there's definitely some major competitive changes that WotC put forth.
I don't want to talk about that. Let's go back to F&M.
Okay, so they put out this big eSports announcement where they're completely updating and modernizing Pro Tour to better incorporate eSports.
Isn't that the way everything's going in terms of gaming, though?
Yeah.
I mean, Twitch is, well,
it's big.
That
it's
is
huge.
gaming now, right?
So basically, they're getting rid of Pro Tour, and instead they're making it now Mythic Championships. Is that what they're calling it?
Okay.
The reason why I can sort of understand why is because since they're incorporating Arena into Pro Tour now, they wanted to rebrand it since Pro Tour was all tabletop Magic before. Now it's both going to be tabletop and Arena, so it's going to be digital and paper.
Wow.
So they're getting rid of Pro Tour and instead it's Mythic Championships. So because everything else is going to be Mythic events.
Digital and paper.
Yeah.
In the same tournament.
In the same tournament. So
walk me through this.
Sure.
Walk me through this.
So in 2019, they have a $10 million prize pool across their digital and tabletop Mythic events. And so for what would be Pro Tours are now going away, being called Mythic Championships. They've increased the prize pool for those specific events up to $500,000 in prizes. So there's this new group of players called the Magic Pro League, which is 32 of MTG's top ranked global players.
My goodness.
Yep. So all of which...
That is a very thin line.
Right, yeah. All of which are offered player and streamer contracts worth up to $75,000 in total.
Amazing.
Yep. So they can actually make a living playing Magic professionally.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so then on top of that, they'll be competing in seasonal weekly matchups on MTG Arena and in Mythic level tournaments, which is the new tournament structure, and both Arena and tabletop play.
So, okay, keep going.
Sure. So in my eyes, this is like a major step in creating real star power for MTG players, since they'll be showcasing these players with like profile write-ups. They'll be following them with stories. People will actually be able to engage with these pro players more.
Is this the thing that they were talking about at PAX East in March 28th through March 31st, right? That's that upcoming event that they were talking about.
So
is that right?
I think that's like marks the start of these events.
Okay,
these
so
mythic
I had
events.
heard something kind of about that. What else you got for me there?
Sure. So the first being at PAX East is going to be a $1 million MTG Arena Mythic Invitational.
And so this January, we're supposed to get more information, January 2019, about
that.
how that's supposed to work, how
Right.
you gain entry into these mythic events, right?
Right. Especially since it's an invitational. So the players that are already going to be involved is going to be people in the MLP, or MPL, the Magic Pro League. And we laymen can also join these invitationals by performing well on Arena. So we play Arena, we play against the pros, we can then come in as challengers to challenge these pros for their seats.
Interesting.
So I think that's pretty cool. I like that. They're getting rid of pro points. Pro points are going to be on a halt.
Wow.
Yep. So they're like completely changing the structure of how this works.
What an overhaul.
Mm-hmm. And
Is this really necessary though? Let's get down to this. I mean, there's got to be some pro players that are really, really upset by this. It thins the herd substantially. There were many, many more than 32 pros at the last Pro Tour.
yeah.
Many, many more, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's good. That's a good point. I'm not entirely sure what the pro scene thinks about this. So from what I've read, it seems to be overall positive. People seem to really be down with the fact that they can make a living playing this game.
Yeah. I mean, that's great.
Mm-hmm. I think it's the fact that it's going to be so rotatable that people are enjoying that fact. Also, at these events, even the people who come in last, specifically for the Pro Tour events, will come home with the prize money. So that seems good for them too. I don't know how I personally feel about that. Normally, I would like to have the prize money divvied up between the top 8.
So how often do you know? I mean, how often are the contracts rewritten? You were saying that there's about $75,000 a year. They give you a streaming and a player contract. If someone can just come in and take your seat, does your contract just go bye-bye?
That I don't know. I think we're going to learn more about that in January when they drop a little bit more information about how this all works.
This is interesting, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Certainly food for thought and definitely a topic for conversation as we continue these podcasts.
Yep. The Magic Pro League will be ranked based on points earned via high finishes at mythic level events. And then the challenger players who do well can take their place. So again, that just kind of reiterates that we laymen, the people who are not pros, have maybe a better shot at getting into these pro events, even if we don't have the time it takes to go in and score all the pro points to be able to get into those invitations.
So they're dropping from 6 to 4 events.
Right.
They're canceling Dallas.
Yep.
They're canceling Sydney. And now we've got just Cleveland, London, Barcelona, and then Richmond.
Yep.
Interesting.
And there was no changes to the invitations of Cleveland and London, but after London, Barcelona and Richmond, the details will be announced during qualifying season, but there will be changes to that.
Okay, well, what about the 2019 tabletop changes? I understand these mythic level events. We'll get more information about that, but what's changing about the tabletop stuff?
Sure. So the prize pool extends to last place, like I was mentioning before. Every player will take home something. After London, there will not be any travel awards offered. So just keep that in mind, probably because they're extending these prize pools. Barcelona and Richmond will not have narrowly regionalized invitations.
Interesting.
So it's going to be a little bit more open.
That's interesting. So the travel awards after London no longer offered.
Yep, they'll be going away.
And so London, from what I saw, it was what, April?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Okay. Interesting.
And then WotC is setting aside additional prize pool funds to partner with independent organizers who want to host MTG Arena eSports events.
Interesting. So they're actually trying to get land centers to do this, or
yeah, probably something like Kemper Arena or something like that. Like if someone who wants to hire that out to put on an esports thing and get people to come and that type of thing, they're setting aside money for events like that, basically for it to be run and have prize pool money.
All right, that sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as this continues to grow, I think that we're going to see this is kind of a fundamental shift.
Yeah, it really is
in the game, right?
They're saying that pro players are important and they want, at least in my eyes, they're saying pro players are important, and they want
people to play
the game and be successful at it.
and play MTG Arena.
And oh yeah, of course.
They are saying that what this kind of says to me is that MTGO may be moving into the Arena environment in the next few years.
So there's been a lot of hot debate on that, and we can touch on that maybe next week.
Sure. We'll leave that there, and then we can get into some hot debate.
Also, something of note, World Championship is now at the end of the year with players from both digital and tabletop.
I don't understand how this is going to work.
Right.
So I'm confused. I mean, to me, World Championships is all been about showing up with your deck, right? Your opponent can cut your deck. Your opponent can pick up your deck and shuffle your deck. Your opponent watches your gameplay. You are drawing cardboard from the top of your cardboard deck, and you're playing on a table.
So what I'm assuming is that they're going to do both digital and tabletop formats versus everyone just doing tabletop at that point. Really what I think this is they're seeing what format garners the most views. And then in the next few years, that's the format that they're going to be pushing.
In terms of esports.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I think is probably going to end up happening. I mean, because they're removing other events like Nationals is going away. World Magic Cup is going away.
Wow.
The Team Series is going away.
World Magic Cup and Team Series are going away.
Pro Club is going away as well.
What a dramatic shift to the online version of the game.
Yep.
There's something here. Okay, maybe I'm showing my age here. Maybe I'm grumbling because old men don't like change. But I can tell you confidently that may be something that kind of pushes me away from at least me now. And who knows, maybe it'll change. But unless I can come up with some type of WotC-issued scanner where I can scan my vast collection of cardboard and somehow be able to play with that in a digital capacity without having to fork over thousands and thousands of dollars to be able to recoup and play with the decks that I want to play with, that's a major drawback for me.
Yeah. And then for those outside of the Magic Pro League, any earned benefits will be granted through the end of 2019. And then the last event that will give out pro points will be Grand Prix Seattle. After that, pro points will be frozen, like I mentioned before. Tabletop Mythic Championships will include qualification slots for players who did well in previous Tabletop Mythic Championships.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then for the Magic Pro Tour Hall of Fame, 2019 will be the last year of qualification and voting as we currently know it. I think what they're kind of alluding to
is that we're going to get like a voting season.
Yeah.
That there's going to be a new Magic Hall of Fame.
That incorporates both arena and tabletop.
And a new structure.
Yeah.
So now.
So I don't think Hall of Fame is going away. It's just not Magic Pro Tour Hall of Fame. It'll probably be called Mythic Championship Hall of Fame or something like that. But it'll both incorporate online and paper.
The Mythic Throne.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So overall, I think it's a positive change, in my opinion. I think that the higher price pool is great. It seems like...
Me too. All about that. More money's good.
It seems like they're trying to make it accessible for people who enjoy the digital or the paper.
And you don't have to pay $1, not a single cent to play MTG Arena.
Yep.
You can build your collection and grind away and do the thing.
Yep.
You don't have to pay a single cent, potentially here, to become massively successful in this new format.
And get paid to play.
And get paid to play. You could, if you are that good at the game and the luck of the cards is with you, you can consistently get paid to not only stream, but then play Magic professionally. And that's something really, really exciting.
Yep.
It's really exciting.
So that's probably where we'll leave it for now. Really cool changes coming. I think time will tell whether or not it's successful or not. I hope it is.
Me too.
And yeah, good luck to everybody who's gonna be playing. I'm sure Jeremy and I will try to put our foot in there, but who knows? We'll probably won't get there. But
don't say that.
Pro Tour is going away. Mythic Championships coming up.
I mean, I'm a talented Magic player, Debo, and so are you. You know, I wouldn't put it past the fact that we had the time to commit. If we do start committing some of that time, that we could eventually get there in terms of the MTG Arena collection. Yeah, let's leave it there for now. I think that we've covered a lot. F&M was great this week. Hope to see you there next week.
Yep.
And then same place, same time for the next episode of the main phase. Until then, this is JB
and Debo
signing off.